Good evening. This is the Raleigh Finance Committee meeting for March 26, 2019. Remind everyone that we're being audio and video recorded. And I call the meeting to order at 7:17. And the first order of business is an appointment with Susan Hazen to discuss her budget.
So what do you want in way of introduction?
Well, I think we were fairly well on most of the stuff. I think the only thing you discussed was the election wages.
The election wages is something that changed substantially.
Right.
And substantially is a relative word. First, I changed it in a manner of my own design, which was ill thought out because it didn't conform to the personnel board step and grade schedule. So then I put it together under the step and grade schedule. But then as I was doing that, I noticed some lack of logic in that at least one of the grades, one of the jobs only paid 5 cents more than the people they were supervising.
Right.
You understand? Which didn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. And so I went to Debbie about that, and she set up an appointment with the personnel board. And so I came to the personnel board last Thursday, and they reorganized the steps and grades for
Right.
this, the election workers' wages. And so once they reorganized that, I did revision number 2, and that's what you have in front of you, bringing the election wages to 36, 56, 58. And you've all heard my explanation that elections in general and election wages have to do with how many elections there are every year. It goes up and down just depending how many elections there are. And next year there'll be at least the presidential primary in March and the regular election.
So the only change was just this top sheet right here?
Yep. Well, my salary, I did increase by 2.25. We've got no suggestions as to how to adjust salary, which we usually do, and this year they did not. I have no issue with my salary, particularly that was seen as just a cost of living adjustment. We've done 2.25 last few years.
Okay.
My only comment, Susan, was on the fiscal year 20 budget. I don't know why, but fiscal year 19 doesn't have a total. So you've got it for 17, 18, and 20.
Yeah, you're right.
So I says, how much did it go up from last year? And I mean, I could have added it up, but I didn't.
And I don't have an adding
So
machine.
that's okay, but it's just something
Yeah,
that should be
and
added.
you know, how many times have I handled this, and I didn't notice that?
Yeah,
I'm sorry. It didn't go up by much. You went up by that 2.25.
right.
You went up a little bit because of the election wages. I said the other ones are level funded to the extent that I can't help if the price of stamps went up. I ordered the same amount of stamps, but the price of stamps went from 50 or 55, so it went up that much.
Right, okay. So that was the only comment I had on that.
That's funny.
Overall, it went down $3,400.
Oh, it did it? Okay, well, that's good.
What did he say?
Said overall, it goes down $3,400 if you look at expenses and
No.
wages.
But it has to do with the elections.
Right, because of the elections.
Right.
Yeah, that's no magic thing that I did. It's just
How many elections we have in a year?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It goes up and down.
Okay. Any,
Total is 91,602.
I'm just going to do it too.
91,602 is what I
Yep.
okay. Okay, any other comments? I have a motion to accept the,
I'll make a motion that we
I'll
accept
second
the
it.
town clerk budget
okay.
Yes, the motion should be to recommend,
to recommend.
yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. The recommendation is approved.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Okay. 20,
Thank you.
close enough. We'll do the Council on Aging next.
I have to make a disclosure here. I'm not a serving member, but I was a member of the council for the Board on Aging.
Okay. Now, the budget that you submitted does include the 5,000
It does.
increase
It does.
for the expenses.
It does, for
Okay.
the programming and operational expenses, that's correct. So it would be 14,904, I believe.
Yes.
Without it, 19,000, with it.
Right. And you also have on the third page a new van driver for 10,440.
That was from, the first year I was here, so fiscal 17, I believe. That was several years ago that was put on.
So he's not new.
So he's not new, so
Oh,
I just didn't
okay.
remove the
Because
new, I
I was wondering if
apologize.
he's a new driver, where the 10,000 was showing up in the wages.
No, it's
Because
included in there, it's,
Okay.
the new, I did not remove the new, I apologize.
Oh, that's all right.
I'll make sure that's done before the final copy.
For your expenses category on Form 3, you have fiscal year 18 appropriations and the request for 20, but all of fiscal year 19 is empty, so you obviously can't see what the increase or decrease is.
Yep, which I apologize, when I sent over everything, the formula didn't carry over somewhere, so when I did the formula calculations, I printed it all out and sent it all over to Debbie and Amy. I realized it after the fact that that whole column didn't calculate for some reason, so.
Okay. So there's no way just to know from last year to,
Yep,
yeah.
yep, so I apologize, but that will be submitted prior to
Okay.
finalization.
If it was 14,904 anyway.
Yeah, it was 14,904, it didn't
The
change.
actual-
Oh, for 19?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
on Form 1, the expense line.
Oh.
It is on
Okay.
Form 1,
The
it just
breakout is-
didn't
Okay.
transfer for some reason in the breakout for the formula.
18, she's requesting the same
Oh,
for
okay.
for 20. and
So it
18.
did, it's on that
Yeah.
Form 1, just, it didn't carry over to the formula in Form 3 for
I
some
see.
reason.
Okay.
So the only difference is the operating program request.
Yes,
and
the
that's only
5,000,
difference.
that's correct. And then, that's the only difference is the 5,000.
And why is that, what's that for? Why is that needed?
So every year we try to increase the programming that we do, and, offer additional services, additional presentations, educational workshops, social programming, scam prevention, lots of different things, and those programs do cost money. And then additionally, most years we tend to come in around this time of year, March, April, May. We come in a little short every year on our expenses. It waxes and wanes depending on the year and what we've done. The price of lots of things, as it fluctuates for programming. If our expenses, if postage changes, that's all included. If, so it does wax and wane. In some years, we're okay, and other years, most years, in fact, we have to, be very, very careful at the end of the year, and a lot of times we end up dipping into our donation account, which waxes and wanes as well. Sometimes, it doesn't have anything in it, it just depends on the year. Sometimes it has a decent amount in it, so this way we wouldn't have to do that, and we can continue to add to our programming every year, with that 5,000.
So it's like a catch-all just for everything that's
Yes.
basically.
Yep.
Do you
So-
have a revolving account?
So we have a revolving account just for our van, which is just what we take in on donations from the various van trips that we do. And then we have the donations account if someone passes away and they say, oh, if you'd like to send donations to the senior center, that goes into our account. Sometimes at the holidays, people will earmark, $100 or $25 as part of their holiday giving. That's where that comes from, but it's not considered revolving, just a donations account. So the only revolving is just the van.
Okay.
Excuse me.
So like what would be the largest expense that would make up the 5,000? Is it any one particular type of expense?
Not
that-
really
no?
any particular one, it's through the course of, of the year. from, fiscal to fiscal. It just includes, different programs, so if we have that money, then we're able to finish out the operating expenses. We do have, our newsletter expenses are fairly hefty, and so that kind of makes up the difference that we see when we get to this point in the year in the spring. And then that additional programming budget to be able to do extra things. We try to take advantage as often as we can of free or low-cost programming, but it's hard to be able to offer, what I'd like to. We need that additional budget.
One other real nitpicking thing on Form 2.
I already know where you're going, Larry. We talked about it today. The same thing on the outreach worker.
Yeah,
It's appearing as 18 and change. It should be 1932. The totals are correct on the next line, the next column rather, but the outreach worker, it reflects at 18 versus the 1932, but the total is correct. And that was the same thing, just when I did the formulas, for some reason it didn't carry over. I think it was the same problem on Form 2 and Form 3. Those columns just didn't carry over for some
Okay,
reason.
what are the 2 asterisks for? And then there's the 1 asterisk for the total includes longevity stipends.
So the asterisks on that particular one, he does have additional hours, but they come from the formula grant. So we just do that as an internal thing between myself and Debbie and the treasurer's
Okay,
office so that we
so
know that. So he
The
actually.
2 asterisks should be 1, or the 1 asterisk should be
I
2?
think it got cut off in the bottom.
I think it got cut off in the bottom.
That's what,
Okay.
But it does, that just allows so that we know that that's what that's for. He actually works 18 hours a week, but that
Right.
additional 5 hours a week comes from the formula grant that we receive from the state each year.
I'll make a motion that we recommend this budget.
Okay, I have a motion to recommend.
I'll second that.
Second by Tom. Any other comments other than you do a very fantastic job,
Thank you.
you and your staff.
Thank you. I'm very lucky with the staff that I have. They work really hard for me and for the seniors of this community, so we're very lucky in that. So it certainly isn't just me.
I love the newsletter too.
Thank you, thank you. It's always a wonderful
I'm
job.
still
that
one of
you-
those people that get it in the mail.
You know,
Right.
there's something about it's just like a book. It's something about having it in your hand.
Yeah,
It does
yeah.
make a difference.
Right.
I appreciate it as always.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of recommending the Council on Aging budget signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work.
Of course, thank you. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Couple of minutes. Why don't we hit the town accountant budget? Throw things out of order.
That's not a good way to say it.
I'll call you tomorrow. Not really a question, was what time the hours that she works.
Good morning, anytime.
Is that, am I correct in saying that she gets $54.77 an hour, that position?
We do it, the accountant.
Is that-
The,
Pardon me? I didn't.
Looking at the wages, assuming, well, looking at the 20 hours, am I correct in assuming that that position pays $54.77 an hour, roughly?
That is a part-time salary, 20 hours a week.
Which equates to like $55 an hour.
Well, let's see, how many, do you take the 52 weeks?
It's 20,
So that's
it's 22,090
1,000, so
hours,
that's
2,090
Yeah,
hours per year,
so-
I think it is.
That's if I
'cause
get
you got
some
an extra 2
longevity in
days.
that. She didn't give me her payroll
Right.
calculation sheet. Do you want me to get it? I have that.
broken down in a
No, I mean, this is a
personnel.
simple division of
54,
Yes.
20
Yeah,
20,000
it's about
2,090 hours, I think, with the extra 2 days this year. It's 262 days.
So there's 2 extra days. I do
262.
have, yeah, this is a red circle, it's called a red circle position. It's a 20-hour week position.
That's an excellent job.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine, but I'm just looking at, you know, almost as much as the town administrator, you know what I mean, and in the fire, and actually more than the fire chief makes.
No, right, but that's assuming that 20 hours is all that she works, type of a thing, as opposed to,
Yeah, because she's salaried. So it
Yeah,
doesn't
but-
matter how many hours she works, that's what she gets. Same with the town clerk. She doesn't have set hours.
Have the town accountants usually work 20 hours a week, usually most towns about this size, like Ipswich or Georgetown or other ones. You know, I have no idea
I
how
just
many
know that
hours.
this is, just historically been the situation in the town, with the accounting department. So you think,
Hmm.
With the assistant accountant, was there a gap in last year or something?
yeah, we did, unfortunately, we lost an assistant accountant. She took another position, and so we just hired somebody, so there was about a lag time.
Yeah, because I see we had like $5,300
Yeah.
left at the end of the year, so I'm
Yeah,
assuming that
so we,
something
right,
left.
was
yeah,
vacant.
she left, and it took about 3 months, 4 months or so to hire a
yeah.
replacement.
The only comment I have is a suggestion really on Form 3 in the increase, decrease column. Like, just about all the other budgets give the, the actual percent. Like, instead of, she's got 1.0300, which would be 3%, for example. Where it dropped from 250 to 200, she's got 0.8000. Actually, that'd be more like minus 20%. You know, if you look at all the other budgets, that's the way they are as a standard. So it's just a suggestion that they do that one the same. So it's consistent with the other budgets.
Yeah, sure.
Nothing wrong,
No.
it's just the
Right.
format.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
the cell should have been
Yeah,
hit. for
and it's
that.
probably a simple, a quick thing. It's just a
Yeah.
suggestion.
No, good point.
Okay, any other questions on the town accountant budget?
No?
We have a motion to recommend the town accountant budget.
I'll make a motion that we recommend.
Oh. Have a second?
Give a second.
Okay, David. Any other discussion on it?
No?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Move on to the fire department.
Okay. I will leave the room.
Did you get the revised papers from reflecting to last night? Just like, okay.
What's the bottom line, is it 664?
664.30, 343.
Yeah, so we have that one, yeah.
Okay, I noticed you corrected the fiscal year 18 actual subtotal wages and salaries.
The 19?
19 wasn't corrected. I think that's 518, 599.
Yeah, well, what we had with the 2 full-time positions, because I wasn't funded for the full year, was a little bit higher.
Okay.
Town meeting appropriation, but we actually only had 243, 280. The wages
Oh,
for 18
I see.
should be.
I see.
For a full year.
Yeah,
full
my
year.
mistake.
So that was an oversight on, it was corrected last night. So the 243, 280 was what was actually, what we had for the operating, for the firefighter position.
Can you just, On the expense
Sure.
form 3,
Mhm.
the dues and publication went quite a bit.
It did go up, I talked, after the meeting we had the selectmen last night, that was, originally it went up because of the OSHA standards that were in effect starting in February of this year, that cities and towns have to fall under OSHA. What I was going to do was have our policy and guidelines updated to comply with the OSHA regulations, which was going to cost $6,000. Debbie mentioned to me that they're going to do an article for all the other town departments that are in the same boat that I'm in. So we took that $6,000 out of the dues and publications. So it's back down to where it was years past. It's down to $3,120. So I just want to make sure you get the right.
Yeah, so I still have 91.
Yeah, that one, we took that $6,000 out.
Okay, so it's
3120. Brings the total to 149,561 for expenses.
141.
The utilities are up 300%.
Utilities are up quite a bit. The reason for that is we're planning on going into a new facility. We don't have a ground based how much our utility costs are going to be. So I took what the designer of the system told me, and this is what he came up to, was that much money. It's electric heat and cooling in the entire building. I didn't remove the 16,000 that we used to have for the Hammond Street station. In discussing it with the selectmen last night, it was felt that we keep it at that number because it's an unknown. We don't know what the costs are going to be. And after a year in the building, we'll have a better idea as to whether that's too much or not enough. So they felt last night that keep it all together just because we don't know what the actual costs are.
Chief, I've got a question. For the subtotal for the salaries and wages, you've got on Form 1, 514,782. And when I go to Form 2, you have total department wages, you have 443,782. And then I added the overtime of 93,000, and even when I added that, it came to 537,000.
The request for overtime, that was, the 93 was fiscal year 19, fiscal year 20, it's 71,000.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm sorry. Okay, we're fine.
Yeah, I did that
I missed
3 or 4,
that.
well, you're not the only one. I did it 5 times before I caught it.
That's the difference to 22,000. So
Yeah.
thank you. I stand corrected.
Chief, on the station, on the expense line, the station and equipment lease, is the majority of that the Hammond Street?
The $20,000, which was paid for the last 9 years, was the rent of the station of $750 a month in the forestry truck payment. The forestry truck, the next payment that comes in this quarter will be the last one, and the truck will be paid off. We're moving out of the Hammond Street station as of May 1st, so that whole thing goes zeroed out. And that's why you see a reduction of $20,000.
I thought you were keeping the Hammond Station going too.
It's been decided that we're moving into the, moving out of the station.
Also, you're only gonna have
One station.
now? Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Hmm.
Oh, okay, because I know before there was.
That was,
truckers operating,
yes, that
because-
was the talk, yes. And it was decided last week.
Oh.
And there's a
They
big increase.
decided to move out. They can always come up with another lease or other arrangement to keep one engine down there.
Well, I thought the idea was to say that, because, that the station was on one side of the valley and they were on
Correct,
the other.
Right.
you're correct. Yes.
So basically, now you can just do it on one station, you feel, and then.
At this point, yes.
And one station before, so
Yeah,
it's a little
well-
bit bigger and a lot
Right.
more staff and stuff. So
Well, 2 people isn't a lot more
yeah,
staff.
well, it's the one they had last year.
Yes,
And I know I heard some of the discussion last night about staffing and
Yes.
all that stuff. It sounds like at some point later you're gonna need additional staffing to cover.
That will most likely
more
come
time,
down the
I'm
road,
guessing,
yes.
I see there's a big jump in station phones, too.
Yes, what's happening there is we're getting a new phone system. The system that we're on now is the Centrex for the town. But with the copper lines eventually going away in Verizon's thing, what we ended up doing is getting involved in a voice over internet system. We'll have 1 or 2 copper lines. There's a fire department reporting line, and our fax machine will still stay copper line for the time being. The rest of them will be over the internet, but with the cost of that, I don't have an internet monthly charge that I have now. It's going to be rolled into the phone. So it does look like more money, but we pay $137 a month for internet connection. That's rolled into the phone system. So at least it is a little bit more on paper, but I don't have another expense for internet. It's almost... Whereas I'm not really sure how much the monthly fee is going to be as of yet because the system's not up and running. What I can gather is only going to be a couple $1 difference between what I'm paying for the internet and the telephones now versus all of it together in one package. And it's tied in with the police department. They're all into one system, so. But that'll be my part of the cost for the phone system.
One other question I had, which was mentioned last night, is the custodial care, the landscaping, the trash removal for the
Yes.
village. Is that in your
It's
budget
not in
somewhere?
here because
Okay.
I didn't know where it was.
You're not going to have any trash, right?
We'll be splitting the dumpster with the police department, so
Right.
I would probably, that might end up being a wash because I pay for the electricity at the top of the hill for the police department repeater and transmitter, and so it might work out where, one take care of the trash, I take care of the electric bill.
Right.
But we're going to talk about the services we could share with maintenance and stuff. It's kind of hasn't really happened yet. A lot of it, I think, has to do with the availability of the current town custodian. With increased hours, there might be an issue there.
Right.
So we'll probably be doing some of it ourselves in the beginning and until we work out that arrangement. And no, it's not reflected in the budget
Okay.
at all. And right now, there's not much to mow or anything out there. A lot of rocks and dirt.
Right.
I don't know what that will end up being, but
Right.
I have no idea what the cost of that would be. I'd have to get somebody to come up and, I guess, give us a cost estimate and go from there. Because how much longer it's going to be, actually need to be mowed, I'm not sure at this point.
Right, and, right now you don't have a lawn, you don't
Right.
have shrubs.
Nothing.
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 So-
A couple of trees out in the back, but
Right.
nothing up front yet. That should be, I would imagine, as soon as the ground warms up a little bit more, they'll start with that.
Right.
And when are you moving in, Chief?
Sometime between now and May 1st.
The road going to be strong enough at this point?
I hope so.
It should be fine.
As soon as,
Binder course?
once,
You're talking about the binder course?
yeah, well, we're talking about the final pavement, but as soon as the plants are open and all that, which I guess the way, I'm not a paving expert by any stretch of the imagination, but it's got to get to a certain temperature, the plants open
Yeah.
up, and if they get it all down in one day and let it set for a day or two, we should be okay before we.
Yeah, they're talking about opening the plants next week. I was talking to Patrick this morning. But the binder course is the structural course of any road.
Right.
So that's gonna hold the 500, the finish is just to make it look good, you know what I mean, so.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about the binder because you go by there and it's
Yep.
kind of a mud hole down there still.
Yeah, I think we'll be okay. I would say hopefully, and it all depends when the phones get put in. Within the next 2 weeks, we should be moving in, and as soon as it warms up enough for the plants to open up, they're going to pave. So
Is it gonna be an open house?
yes, we're going to do a joint one with the PD. We just got to figure out a time where the ball fields aren't being used to have parking and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was hoping for an Airbnb, but
Well, hopefully it'll be a good one. I got some things that we can bring in from the fire marshal's office for displays. And we're going to sit down and come up with a date and probably wait until after all the dust settles for moving in and stuff. It's kind of hectic right now. It's somewhat hectic for us, but it's really worse for the PD because they're working and living in the same building at the same time. They've been better than me.
Okay, any other questions,
No.
comments? You have a motion to recommend the fire department's budget?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Any other comments, questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, chief.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Come back in, Sharon.
Oh, emergency management is level funded and $1,000 increase in the stipend for the director. Forgot about that one. Almost forgot it last night.
Yeah, that's a separate sheet, but we don't have it, so.
It's under the appointment. And it's right around the emergency management on the agenda.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
says
it's all
fire-
It's a-
mentioned there.
it says
it's
fire
in there.
department and
But do we-
emergency management.
Do we have a,
You know, I have that in the package.
It was sent in there with the original
Yeah.
budget.
So I can make copies.
Don't see it.
Yeah, I don't see it either.
We don't have it.
Okay.
You have it, Larry?
No, I don't.
No,
Okay, well, we can look at that in a couple of minutes. Thank you, chief.
Okay.
Let's move on to the personnel department. If you can get that one taken care of while.
that's an easy one. No change.
That's because you're a pro.
It's $399 one.
almost as big as ours.
Right.
I'll make a motion to accept it. I'll
Second.
recommend.
Recommend.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
A motion and a second. Any discussion on the personnel budget? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any
Why didn't they-
opposed? Pardon?
I said, why did they even bother having, why can't it just be rolling? I mean, is that?
Well,
Statutes and has to be department, personnel, and.
They might need other stuff later on. Right now, it's just covering the cost of
Leave it to
maybe
me.
printing the personnel manual that
That's what I,
we've been
happens when I
working
don't
on.
have a desk.
Okay. Be a little out of order.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah,
trying
I'm
to.
just looking at it, see, I don't see it here.
What you looking for?
No.
The water department.
Ah, it's on the new one,
It's here, we saw it.
745.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's not mine.
Nope. Let's quick review the emergency
Snuck another
management.
one underneath.
Yeah. Oh. okay. Make a motion that we accept or recommend the emergency management budget.
I'll second it.
Okay, have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on it? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Why you
I
still-
just recommended.
Okay, easy, yeah.
Okay, now to the highlight of the evening, the Water Department. I know, it's only getting
10% down.
I saw that.
getting to be book length. Yeah. Has everybody read the 2 pages of explanations at the front? As far as, okay, so,
Bernie, I had a quick question. Said the staffing plan meets DEP requirements for our size system. What goes into, how do you quantify your system as opposed to another town system?
It's, they size the system by essentially the volume of water that's essentially sold. Is that-
Yeah, the amount of.
Does everybody know Rob, by the way? This is Rob,
Yeah,
our chief operator.
Rob Siniarski, chief operator of the Raleigh Water. Systems are usually sized with distribution systems would be like population served, how many pressure zones you have, how many storage tanks you have in your town. And treatment systems are usually sized by what kind of treatment chemicals you'd be using and what type of processes you'd be using to treat the water. Our current classification is it's a grade 2 treatment system and it's a grade 2 distribution system.
What does grade 2 mean?
It means you would need a grade 2 distribution operator license to run our system in Raleigh.
How many grades are there though?
There's 4 grades.
There's 4 grades, so the higher.
In
grade-
Massachusetts, it's 4 grades,
The
yes.
higher the grade, the more.
The more complex.
Yeah, they have
Complex,
treatment
yeah.
and distribution too, right? There's a grade 2 for treatment as well.
Yes, there's also a treatment license,
Yeah.
grade 2.
okay. One question I had in the group insurance, which is a separate budget item, are talking about taking the water department, health, and Medicare out of that and having it separate. And I didn't know on the overview of your budget, probably about page 4 or 5, whether that under item 3, you've got overtime standby, health insurance, Medicare. Whether
Correct,
that,
that's the line. So I had already moved it for the purposes of this presentation, but I hadn't attached a line item to it yet because I had to wait to talk to Sue Bailey and find out if there's any magic in that number.
okay,
So we'll put the number in as and when we get a determination about it. But it is, I did back out the numbers from previous years so that you had something to compare the numbers with.
And just noting on the first page here, you have 1.7 million in the free cash, is that correct?
If we can trust the state, yes. Because this week,
That's a healthy free cash, I would say, right?
yes, that's our current stabilization fund.
Not free cash.
It's not free cash. Free cash is.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, stabilization fund, yeah.
So the free cash that was certified earlier this week, which means yesterday, was 600 odd thousand, and that's from last.
So that'll go in addition to the 1.7?
No, that
Oh,
includes the
including.
1.7.
Getting back to the health insurance, it looks like from 19 to 20, it's dropping by 15,000. And yet
Because you
you're,
get one less person, I think, right?
The staffing is one less person, and we kind of essentially
even though
relooked
you're
at the
picking
census.
up from the group health insurance line, I guess I just don't understand if that was being paid by the town, then and you're picking up that insurance
We would
now.
reimburse,
Yeah.
we reimburse the town.
Okay.
So it came out, that previous number was in article, the overhead article, and that is Exhibit 6 in the package that I had. I'd read, so you've got where the old numbers are. In yellow, that's the health insurance that used to be, that we would pay back to the town.
Just an explanation, that in the past, the light department and the water department is enterprise funds. The town is paid up front, the health insurance and the Medicare, and then they reimburse us, most of them at the end of the year in June. And because the costs have gotten so high, what we've done is, from now on, starting in July 1st, that those two departments, light and water, will reimburse the town for the health and the Medicare on a monthly basis, so that they'll keep up with the current. When we get a bill, which we get monthly, they'll get their bills the same time we do, instead of us fronting the cash and then getting reimbursed later. So it's just a bookkeeping
Okay.
thing to account for the money and make it obvious that, what the costs are, and their hit, especially the light department was even higher. And with the two enterprise funds, they pay us back anyway, but rather than us fronting it, we get paid back monthly, so that our cash on hand is equal to what it should be, and not in arrears as far as those two departments.
What's the color coding in here? There's yellow and red and,
Well, yellow is meant to attach, bring it to your attention.
okay.
And red is when it's, there's an issue, or there's it's either increased or decreased. It's just like in regular accounting.
Because the red kind of like, my eyes are bad, but you get the red under the yellow and it's like trying to read it.
Oh,
So
I-
it's a little difficult on the smaller print anyway.
I apologize for that. It looks great on my computer screen. So.
Yeah, it probably does, yeah. I thank you for increasing the size on some of the stuff, because I know on the computer screen it's real tiny, but you blew up some of the stuff so that we could at least read it, so it's good.
Yes, if you guys want, if there's a standard that somebody wants to set, then we'll go with the standard. My goal is to try and keep it as few pages as possible, so I kind of resize stuff when I can to get it down to one page if it's possible.
On page 2 of 2 on the expenses,
Yes.
can you explain what the increase is, why the increase on the maintenance of service lines? It went from 12 to 45.
Okay, so this is a gory story. If you look at the FY18 actual numbers, those were very modest numbers in terms of the maintenance expenses. This last year for FY19, which you now can see the FY actual, which is the fourth column of numbers. And then I've annualized those numbers. So those two maintenance numbers are, now I am having trouble reading the numbers. 36, the annualized number for FY19 is 36,000 on the water mains and 103,000 on the service lines. Now,
Is this what you're anticipating to spend this year?
yes,
At the end
it's,
of the
we've already spent 23 on the water mains and
66.
66. So that was way above what we were anticipating. That's basically because of the number of breaks that we've actually had and the fact that the contract we had to go with a much more expensive vendor because of a major issue with the bidding process, and it was appealed.
So
and
this
we
is
ended up-
a contractor that's doing this work, right?
Yes.
Because the services, I mean, jumped considerably, and I was just wondering, is there a lot of services that we have issues with?
No, we're also, what we're also trying to do is combine those two line items, the maintenance of water mains and maintenance of service lines, into one line item. Because it's the same thing when you're digging up the street. You get down to it, and it doesn't matter if it's the water service or the water main that's actually broken. You're doing the same job.
Right.
We've had a lot of trouble in the past when they're trying to figure out what line item to use in the office after we do a dig, and we decided it's kind of pointless when you're digging up the water mains to figure out whether or not it should, if the service line broke off of the water main, which line item do you use? Same job.
Right.
So the tough question is how you estimate it going forward, given our recent experience, bad experience. Now, a lot of that is attached to the Pine Grove School construction project. So that created a fair amount of difficulty for the department in terms of fixing, both accommodating it and then fixing it when something actually happened.
You talking about the new line that they put into the school?
Yes, well, what we then have to do is try and control the water and the existing mains, obviously, in order to affect that, and
Yeah,
that.
the taps in and stuff, the gates and stuff, okay.
Well, the gates, we had gates, they
The-
didn't
the-
work.
Yeah, the one job turned into 3 jobs.
Oh,
So.
okay. So that, you don't charge that to the project, or?
We would be delighted to, but we wouldn't typically, because it's on our end, it's on the mains itself, so. But you give me an idea. No, I think there's, sorry?
I mean, it's associated with the project. I mean, I know that they're tight on their end. In fact, I think that was a change order on the school side, because it was originally just supposed to be an extension into the building, and they found the line was really corroded or whatever, and they had to replace it, so.
I think the issue is that our gate valves failed, and they're our gate valves.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if you think,
Well,
that
it's-
we should charge it back, there's a grounds.
No, because I mean,
for it.
that's kind of stealing, just not stealing, but taking money from the town for a town project.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see why that,
Yeah.
just let the water department pay for it.
Yeah, yeah, I think at a certain level, we understand where we are in our budget vis-a-vis the rest of the town, and that we are, it's ratepayers and taxpayers' money, so we aren't trying to split hairs with people.
What engineering services are you anticipating for the 25,000? Because I know there's 2 line items for engineering. There's one that's, it was 50,000 last year, but I think it got cut to 25,000. It's account number 014525405, and then you have engineering also on page 2 as well.
Well, let me just catch up.
And I was just wondering if that was what you were planning on doing with the, see on the bottom line under billing contract services, you have
Yeah.
engineering services.
Right,
And you're putting in 25 there.
yep.
Um,
And where do you see the other
Well, the other one was on,
services, outside services?
yeah, you got this is all maintenance, right? But last year there was an additional engineering operations labor account that had 50,000 in it, and at the end of the year, you had $38,700 left in it, so, there's a considerable amount of money there. I didn't know whether there was just a duplication there, or,
Oh, I see what,
see what I'm saying?
no, there's,
I
in
mean,
the
this is all under
expenses,
maintenance, and you got
expenses, well, this is partly what got confusing last year, and why
Exactly.
we ended up adding when we should, subtracting twice instead of, so that engineering services line is
The only-
56,010. That's what it was. In FY18 budget, we had budgeted 50,000.
Yep.
Last year, we went down to 25,000. Again, we are being more prudent in the way we use our engineering services. The guys need the ability to call Tater and Howard when they're coming up with a particular difficult issue. So they need that, they need an allotment so that we don't have to we can't predict when it is. So it's there to allow them to call it when they need it. Previously, it was, how should I term it? It was a crutch, and now we don't need that crutch.
Yeah, no, I mean, I understand there's things that you need engineering for, but I was just wondering, I see two places where there's money, and I didn't know whether it's now reduced down to this
There's only
56,010. Because last year there was another line item in there. There was maintenance of water department, which was the $699,000, which really should have been 700 and something. And then below that, there was a line item called engineering
Right.
operations labor
Right.
of 50,000, and you spent approximately, well, you're spending 11,285, and there's 38,714 left over. But is that going away this year? So that account is gone, right?
No, this is the formatting issue. So the template that we have, that's in other, and those two lines that are right at the bottom of page 2 of Exhibit 3, those are the two lines that then show up as lines 7 and 8 in the standard presentation for the ATM. So there's not a one-to-one correspondence.
Like, see what I'm saying? I just want to, see the maintenance of water.
Right.
That's all these items, including the engineering that he has here.
Right.
But below that is engineering operations, another additional 50,000.
Mhm.
So I'm just saying there's 25, and do we still have that in the budget?
The answer
He's
is
saying no.
no.
Okay.
No, it's been split out. Those others have been split out.
Right.
In a part to reflect the format that's here. So there's no, we have no other, in my budget, there's no, in the water department budget, there's no other engineering services line except that one.
Okay, that's what I want, because the way the account has it set up, it's too different, you know?
They're changing it.
But-
Yeah, okay,
Right.
that's fine, that's the answer, I guess, you know?
Right, and we still need the 25,000 because
Yeah,
we
I'm
don't,
not- I'm
we
not
don't
debating
know.
that.
You need, and we're prudent in the way we use it. So this year, for example, year-to-date, we've used 4,000 of it. Annualized, it'll come out to 6,000. And we've budgeted 25,000. But that's, tomorrow we may get an issue and they have to call and we're
Right.
at the mercy of the engineer at that point.
Yep.
Not at the mercy, we'll negotiate hard, but
No, I
they make the call.
understand that now, not as long as it's consolidated to one line, 25,
It is one
that's
line,
fine.
yeah, but it's a good catch, thank you.
Could you explain a little bit about this connection you're doing to Georgetown? I listened to it a little bit last night, and then I have a couple questions just to make sure that, you know, the budget reflects some of the costs and stuff.
I can explain that a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, can I
This-
make one statement
Sure,
first?
yeah.
This is all provisional, so there are no commitments, there's no, we've been to, as I said last night, we've been to the altar and the bride never showed up. So this is a kind of planning ahead of it, and we're thinking about it.
But you kind of explained that they were in dire straits, and it sounds like they're gonna need.
For this year,
Yeah.
indeed, they do need, this summer, they need an emergency connection done. But in the future, we're looking into supplying them water on a long-term basis. But that's still in the future, and we're still kind of going over some plans. But yeah, for this year, they do need an emergency connection done.
Will that affect the permit that you have with DEP? Because, you know, you're allowed X amount of gallons to be pumped, and now you're pumping 100,000 or whatever it is to Georgetown. Does that come out of our permit, or is that?
It does come out of our permit, but we're far below what we're allowed to use, and this has already been looked into. And yeah, they're only going to be allowed to take so much per day because of our permits.
So we're planning for future expansion of Rowley as well in there, because I mean, if you've got Georgetown as a customer now and they're gonna be relying on us for a long time, now we need more water for our customers, we can't cut it at that point. So I guess what I would say is when you create the contract, that you have some wording in there so that, you know, we come first. And
Well, I would say especially if there's a water emergency, you don't want Georgetown to be tapping into.
That was the first thing we talked about, that there's
No.
going to be multiple occasions where we're going to have to shut them off and just supply our own residents with water, and, you know, they will be on their own.
so what happens to them if you shut
That's,
them
I mean,
Yeah.
that's a.
Because every year we have a
Yeah.
water ban,
Yeah.
and it seems like it's getting earlier and earlier, because they say the Ipswich River,
Yeah,
whatever
Parker
is,
River.
Parker River.
I'm sorry, Parker River is, it reaches a certain low point. And so, and now if we're gonna be pumping a lot of that to Georgetown, we're
Right, but
probably
the
gonna
Parker
be in a
River,
year-round
but
water
the
ban.
Parker River doesn't impact us at all. It's just a marker. It's just a proxy for how much water is in the aquifer.
Water table,
Yeah, and so that's what the state uses to decide when they call the water ban. So if the snow melt is late, the water ban starts late. If the snow melt is early, like it is this year, it could well start early, but it's got nothing to do with the level. It's just the way they've decided, the marker that they've got, and
So is the
Easy
infrastructure
way
in place
of,
to tap into?
easy way of
Georgetown to tap into the-
making a
our
decision,
resource?
So-
Do we have pipeline and
Yeah.
all that?
as opposed to trying to
measure
figure
the
out how
aquifer.
much is in the aquifer.
So how long is the term that we're gonna supply
From
Georgetown?
April to August.
4-month period?
Yeah.
And we have the pipelines already
There is
established?
we have a interconnection, which is just a basic water main connecting our town from theirs.
Hydrant to hydrant.
Yeah, what we'll actually do is, just so we're not taking water from them, they're gonna set up a large, like 1,200 gallon per minute pump and run it hydrant to hydrant. In the long term, they actually wanna build a small facility with like a booster pump to kind of pump water from us to them.
As far as the operating budget, how does that factor in? Because there's expenses there to do whatever, right? I mean, do we have money in these line items and then we get reimbursed from Georgetown? I mean, I know you haven't
We think
structured anything
we
yet,
think
but-
the incremental, our budget's set up to basically handle the incremental costs. Because it's at the margin. I mean, the biggest costs are sunk costs. Rob has got some additional numbers, but we will be getting additional revenue.
But there's treatment costs and stuff like that to treat the water, so are we putting that in here, you know, or is that gonna affect this budget because we have a big customer?
Well, I
that's
think we'll keep running the numbers and see what the economies of scale actually turn out to be.
We should-
Because we never run the plant to the volume that we're going to run the plant at, so we really don't know what those numbers are. We can do a kind of like on an average cost basis, and I think that's what
Yeah.
Rob has done. But those numbers are still kind of small to worry about at this point, and if we looks like the budget is getting too tight, then we will come back for some modification. Transfer. It's not as if we're gonna have a lack of funds to transfer in. We're basically fairly optimistic. The big issue is though, before the end of the year, we maybe have signed a much longer-term agreement with Georgetown. Under those circumstances, we need to kind of rethink the budget again. but we need some, I think we need some experience of
Yep.
pumping the extra gallons in order to really figure out what those actual incremental costs are. We don't see any need to increase staffing or anything like that. So it's really just better utilization of the existing capacity of the plant that we have.
You setting a cap on gallons pumped?
Yep. Yep. No more than 100,000 gallons a day we'll be supplying them with. That keeps us from going over our permitted amount of water. Keeps us from getting in trouble.
How much do we pump a day?
About between 400 to 500,000.
Should be another 25%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. I did a mock-up budget for it for when we do actually try to sell Georgetown water. But again, this was all just in the works, in the plans. We don't really know if it's going to happen. But after the meeting that we had with them, as we're pretty much walking out the door, like, hey, by the way, we need an emergency connection this year. And we're like, oh, okay, well, the budget's pretty much already done out for this year.
So what is the problem over in Georgetown, and do they have a long-term fix?
At the moment, they don't have a long-term fix, but one of their problems is the high amounts of iron in their water, which is kind of like clogging up their wells that they do have. Not enough wells to supply their current population. They can supply, but it's right on the edge. Most of their wells have a very high level of iron that the wells just can't handle. They end up clogging up and failing on them within like 6 months of use, and they have to take the well apart and redevelop it. We just redeveloped our wells, and it was probably like about 50,000 for the two separate well sites. We only have to do that every 3-4 years. They have to do it every couple of months, which it comes to the point where they're thinking about just abandoning the well because they just can't afford to even use it.
So the longer, you raise the longer term issue, you know, we have an undeveloped well site, well number 4, that was looked at, and then the process was, the further development was abandoned because of some property issues, I believe, some landowner
I don't know
issues.
what happened with the project, but
So, but the engineering work has been done. We don't know how well it's been done, so we got an article in for this year to kind of review all that past paperwork and see how close we are to being able to use that site. So, so I think they had test wells. There's test wells out there. The test wells proved, but we have to kind of go. We'll probably have to prove them again. We're just hoping that well site will be good, because otherwise we're going to have to go looking for something afresh, basically, and that's a long process. So we've begun the process, because if we do, with it, given our own growth, if we are supporting Georgetown, which is good for us in terms of the economics of the plant, it would be smart to have an extra well on hand. An extra, that may not mean, though, even if we put the extra well in, we may still only be allowed to pump the same number of
Yeah,
gallons.
that's what I'm saying, DEP's gonna regulate how much you can pump anyway.
Right. So that's, but it's better to have the extra well, knowing that we can use it.
You can shut down another one for service and then open this one up, yeah, makes sense. When was the last time the PAL system was changed, or how often do you change that?
the filters themselves,
Yeah,
the filters won't have to be changed out for another 10, 15 years from now.
The filters, I thought.
The filters they just get cleaned.
Yeah,
You don't
okay,
you don't
so-
actually take them out and replace them.
Okay, because we're
We're
putting money aside to
Right.
buy a new one, which they come down in price, I know, over
Yes.
the years. So they haven't been replaced since okay,
Nope.
just washed and cleaned?
Yeah, that's washed and cleaned.
How many times do they do that?
They say how many twice a month we
Twice a month.
we clean them.
Okay.
So the water treatment plant though I don't think it's evenly allocates, whatever to reduce the, the contaminant or, whatever is in the water system, because I know, looking at comments that people make, some people are, saying that they get brown water sometimes and stuff like that, and what do you think that's attributed to?
It's attributed to
And,
the distribution system not being cleaned out enough. The treatment plant removes about 98 to 99% of all the manganese in the groundwater.
Yeah.
All of my secondary contaminant reports show zero, like no iron detected and no manganese detected. But it doesn't mean that there's not iron and manganese still stuck on inside of the pipes in the
Pipeline.
distribution system, which because of our staffing situation for the past couple of years, we really haven't been able to get out there and like really clean the pipes out. It's kind of a shame that we do have a brand new treatment plant that is filtering out all of the iron and manganese, almost 100% of it. But there's still lingering amounts of iron and manganese throughout the system that we just haven't been able to get out there and clean.
Yeah, well, I mean, the other part of the issue is we've got a lot of dead ends, and that means that the
The
stuff
water could stay
builds
there
up.
for hundreds of years, it never moves. People think that water circulates all around, you turn on the faucet, but water actually can sit in a corner for hundreds of years, never get moved.
Right, and
So that-
if we don't get out there and, actually flush the fire hydrants, then it will just stick there for, years.
And it's episodic. I mean, you don't, some people will have it, and 95% of the town won't be impacted at all. It will impact one or two or a handful of locations repeatedly. And we did go through and try to get some of the dead ends flushed, right? And we are fighting now, more aggressively fighting, and there's a new
systems.
development
To loop the systems.
to loop the systems and not allow dead ends. So, but it is a concern, because the actual quality of the water is excellent.
Yeah.
And that has improved in the last 3 years, because Rob has essentially, we backed off the volume of chlorine that we've been adding to the water, to make sure, to stay still within the state requirements, but to essentially just meet the state requirements rather than kind of essentially overdosing the water. You can probably say more.
Yeah, we considerably lowered the chlorine dosage throughout the system with the help of the treatment plant. I wouldn't have been able to do any of that without the treatment plant involved.
I had a couple of questions on the capital.
Yeah.
And I guess it's just a question, did we ever insulate the pipes at the water treatment plant?
We did not.
The vent, took care of it?
Yes.
The vent, all right, so that's money that we had to have.
We have a whole bunch of money that we plan on.
The whole
So you're gonna repurpose all that stuff?
HVAC
Yep.
system.
And the other question was, did we, I'm not sure that we had to do anything, but did we complete that DEP survey compliance that had to be done
We
right
did,
away?
yes.
So there were a lot of things
Far
on there
over
that just
budget.
dropped off, but.
Correct.
But the other one, were there a couple things on there that we needed to do?
No, we completed that project far under budget, but we are looking at another sanitary survey this year. So we're kind of talking whether or not it's wise to just hang on to the money for a little bit longer
Yep.
while we go through this 2019 sanitary survey, just in case we may need a little bit. We won't need that amount,
Yep.
but we may need some of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what it's there for, but I mean, the idea of the water department coming in and telling us that we need 400,000, find out later we don't need any of it, and then the 200,000, we don't need any of it. I mean, I say there's a big change, and I'm very happy that you guys are on board, because you're doing a great job. I'm trying to look at those things a little bit more,
Right.
so that we're not just throwing darts at the wall.
Please do, and again, I can't express enough how important it is to kind of talk to the people who actually have their hands on the stuff and treat them with respect and listen to what they're saying, and not believe that the superintendent or the commissioners know more than the guys on the ground. It's not that we're just going to take everything that they say, but they do know. And so, for example, the last survey, sanitary survey, included a certain amount to redo the Pingree Farm Road, to widen it and take down trees, and these guys knew that it didn't need to be done. Now why it was on there beats the hell out of me, but again, we obviously need to protect the system, and both from a safety point of view, safety of the employees, and safety of the water supply, but we do it prudently, and we're not kind of foolishly asking for stuff that we don't need. I mean, in fairness, on the HVAC system, nobody knew, because nobody asked. And nobody went back and asked the original engineers why we had a problem. That was kind of like persona non grata, and nobody wanted to talk to them, but that's dumb. I mean, these are the people who designed it, and as it turned out, as soon as you could tell the stories.
For the ventilation?
Yeah.
Yeah, we just shut the vent off. It was
Well, the engineers came in and they said, well, why are you running the vents? So the very people that we should have asked before we went through all this sturm and drang around the dehumidification system, somebody should have talked to them. Yeah, they blotted their copybook, but they still had they still designed the system to do certain things.
That's past history now, and I'm glad it's gone, because I think it gives more credibility to the water department as we move forward. I just have one last question, and I'll shut up. Rate study. I know we're talking about reducing the rates, and is there another rate study going to be done at some point later to reduce it even more?
Yes, we will do that. The problem that I had, I would say, with the past rate study was those are the same guys who did the capital assessment plan, which basically said we needed to replace a fair amount of mains, and they had a very systematic methodology to go through everything, but it wasn't reflected in where the breaks were and what the actual issues were with the pipes. So it was kind of like very much preventative, but it was not necessary. If we have a pattern of breaks which suggests there's a weakness in the system, we'll address it.
It's not like redoing streets. I mean, you got to figure they're going to last 40 years. The replacement water mains can sit in the ground for hundreds of years. I mean, 200-year, 300-year water mains and wooden mains in Boston are still there.
Right.
I mean, when I was in Saugus, we had a calciumite pipe, and it was no more than a stovepipe tin covered with concrete. And you would say that's going to break in. You know, it did break over time because of the increase in pressure, but it was there for like almost 100 years.
Yeah, even that.
So you don't replace a main just for the place of remaining, just for the
sake of
replacing it.
Yeah.
But I mean, we want to get rid of the the transite pipe at some point and put it with ductile. I mean,
right, that was about to say that if the pipes are posing any sort of health risk whatsoever, I mean, we'd obviously be right on top of it, replacing them. But the pipes in question are not posing any health risks, and they're not breaking. And we already have enough loans to pay off. We don't need another $8 million or something.
Right. So we had a problem with who did the rate study, not because they were doing anything, underhanded. It's
just they were told, I think, by the superintendent of what.
And they had their own. They had done the assessment of the pipes. I mean, so that was factored in. So the big change in the rate study, the thing that was going to actually push the rates up, was $10 million to spend on replacing mains. That was captured and reflected in their study of the main system. So the pattern of breakages did not indicate that was the issue.
But now that you got the 1.7 million or whatever in there, I mean, long term, are you going to create another plan that's doable and then work towards it? I know you might have to bond some things, but you have enough money there to kind of like start looking at doing the things you have to do.
Look for grants and everything. Yeah.
Yep.
Look for grants. We got to replace main valves first, so we can actually, you know, make sure we can shut down sections of the road before we start the project.
Loop systems that you could do yourselves or whatever, you know.
Right, and the notion is that the plant will be paid off in 33. And we basically are hoping that we get to 33 before any next major capital plans. So the stabilization fund at the moment is there because if we have to replace half a mile or a mile of mains for any particular reason under duress, then we have the funds in the stabilization fund to handle that.
Do you ever do leakage tests or pressure drop tests to get a feel for how the lines are?
Yeah, we do flow testing around town to see how everything's kind of, because there is a standard number that you should try to be above throughout your entire town.
Input versus output.
Yes, so we do it's about every 2 years we'll go around and just test various hydrants around town just to see where we're at.
We do have an ongoing leak detection.
Best thing you're doing.
We do have an issue about our unaccounted water is still high, and we don't know where it is. And we keep on looking for it. Part of that is also we're going to be replacing, the plan is to replace some of the meters as well, particularly on heavier users, because the older the meters, the easier they ease up. They don't count the water, the gallonage that they're actually using. So not really for residents, although that should happen as well, but the first priority is to kind of get the bigger users and get them to update the meters. I'm just speaking the truth here.
Yeah.
So I can leave that magnet on there for now.
Yes, you get it.
So the rates are going down, you said possibly 10%?
They're going down 10% for 3 years.
Mhm.
So in terms of making the assessment, we weren't going to kind of drop the rates this year and then figure out that, oops, we have to raise them up again next year. The planning here was that we can hold the line at least for 3 years, so that's 10% for the next 3 years. And obviously, if there's some change in an external factor, like, for example, Georgetown comes on, then the rates will go down even more. And the rates can even go down even more now because we've got such a good handle on the expenses, a much better handle on the expenses, basically from experience, because we now know this, much more comfortable with the system. And there's no reason for us to be accumulating large amounts of money in the stabilization fund. So if we can make it predictable, then we will be able to reduce the rates more. That was the plan before, and we're finally in
That being
position.
said, there are some things, but I know they're not huge money, but I'm, looking at like operation, energy expenses. Now, why did you push it back up to 120K when?
It should be exactly the same.
But it was down, you projected to be 91,000 annualized, so you're still saying, okay, well, we're gonna hit it back up to 120 again. There's
Well, the annualized is, the only way to really look at the annualized number is it's an order of magnitude number.
Right.
And so we don't know what that number is. In fiscal year 18, it came in at 107,000.
Right.
So did we have a mild winter this year? No, I have no idea why that. Given the problems that the light department is having with their revenue flows, we don't know why it's that much lower than the previous year. So this is, again, I think this is one of the issues with municipal financing is we have to operate conservatively because it's a very difficult to kind of move monies around if we find we've underestimated. So we tend to always overestimate what those costs are unless we've got, a clear contract we don't have a clear contract for any of the energy supplies.
Okay. Well, anyway, that was, I just.
It's a
What about,
good
like,
question.
what about fees in general? You don't, you see, because now you're pushing that one up to 11,000 again. When you're paying the 69, isn't that more predictable, your fees? And more?
It was 9,900 in FY 18.
Yeah.
When we go through the estimation, we're looking at both what our current run rate is and what you'd annualize it out as, but the hard number we've got is FY 18. That seems ridiculous to me to be using that, that number, but there's no other number to use. And particularly because many of these things are front-end loaded or back-end loaded, we just really don't have the model that we can get a better estimate at this point until the end of the year. So FY 18 is the best marker to actually look at what our request number is.
Okay.
But again, these are good questions. I'm not afraid of the questions. It just.
I just wonder how they, how you generate, the numbers, but now I see your department's always run more conservatively in terms of, that's good, I guess. More in terms of over the years, we've seen that you had like $600,000 more, in the maintenance and stuff like that, but, it looks like the dividends are starting to pay off now.
We're pulling them down, and so the two priority items that I have in terms of the expenses would be our telephone bill is still, it's a vast black hole of unknown why it's so high, and the energy. But there's very little that we can do because we're at the back end of other uncertainties. Like the power company, if they sign a contract for a high-cost supplier, guess who gets to pay the high-cost suppliers? And that's what they've been doing, much to my umbrage.
I commend the water department for all the time and energy put here, and your time and Rob's time. I mean, without a superintendent, we're running a great department, and even though I think the rate should go down a little bit lower, I mean, at least we're going in the right direction, because we see that, some of the monies that we had over the years were probably a little excessive. I hope you take the 1.7 and invest that back in the town and into whatever you need in the future, as opposed to growing that to a point where it's pretty large. But you guys are doing a great job. The board's doing a great job, I think.
Yeah, and I want to, the one reason why Rob is here is because a lot of these are his estimates and Bob Gray's estimates. And they're basically shooting straight. There's no, if there's any buffer, it's because they believe that the buffer is needed.
What grade license do you have?
Grade 3, treatment and distribution.
You can't, he's not qualified for a superintendent's job.
By all means, talk him into it.
Yeah, I know. I mean, he's done a lot. I mean, and I know a lot of it, you had to learn as you went, but the system's running great and doing a great job, so I mean.
Thank you, appreciate it.
That's.
So,
This was
just
a very
one
good
question I had
analysis,
about.
too.
Sorry.
No, I just said this was a very good analysis.
I just want to know, could you show how that number, the 1.7, because I'm looking, I see the cover letter says the $1.7 million after free cash is certified. Is there a way that can be extrapolated from here at all, or is it just?
No, it just comes, as I said, I got the slip from Debbie and she got it from the state on Monday.
Okay.
And
how much was that actually?
Now, that's a funny story. So they said they announced and certified that we had 1.7 million in free cash. Well, given that we already had $1 million in our stabilization fund, that meant we had more money in the stabilization fund than the town did.
Yeah.
Well, that was because the state didn't subtract the existing stabilization fund from the amount of money that the cash number. So in order to figure out what the free cash was, you've got to take the cash number that you've got and then take this existing stabilization money from that, and that will give you the free cash that they're going to certify. So we got about 600,000 in free cash. Now, most of that free cash, the huge bulk of it is coming from unfilled
Salaries,
positions.
yeah.
And we've got 2 open positions at the moment. We can't fill those positions unless we put monies into the budget to fill those positions. So our intent is to fill those 2 positions. We're having a hard time finding the people. The reason why we've got, if you look on the sheet, on the salary sheet, you'll see that there are 2 positions that are on the salary sheet. One is for utility labor and the other is for a assistant foreman position on the distribution side. Those are the 2 positions are open. We've only funded one of those because if we get the utility laborer, we're not going to fill the assistant foreman. We're going to grow that utility person, and so that's why that position is actually not funded. We've got enough money in the assistant foreman's line to cover that position if we end up hiring at that level. So otherwise we'd have 2 positions in there, and we don't need 2 positions.
So what about the water superintendent?
The water superintendent, that's the new salary schedule.
Because it was 75 before or something?
It was 75, the grade level would have brought it in at 75. Last year, we couldn't find anybody. So we put in starting the next grade up, which was 93. This year, when they did the survey for department heads, it's still the same grade level, but the years, the whole span of that grade level goes from about 80 odd to this number, 97. And the personnel board essentially agreed that we could hire the person within that grade level at whatever salary was going to work. And obviously we don't want to hire them at the top, but we could end up hiring them at the top. So that's why that's the number that's in there. Does that make sense?
Well, I think in light of the fact that it's been difficult to get a superintendent, I think you have to have, that number in there, because, no one has been running to the door to
Rob is
sign up
holding out for a
a
7-figure salary,
Yeah.
so.
7. Jump over 6.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Can I have a motion to approve the water? Motion to recommend the water.
I'll second that.
Any other comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it, and we recommend the water budget. Thank you very much, Rob.
Thank you.
Very-
I have the great pleasure of
Very
saying
good job.
thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Or lady and gentlemen.
Lady, yes, I'm getting very outnumbered on this board now.
Have a good night.
Thanks, Rob.
Okay, moving on to the harbor master. Rather straightforward. Any comments, questions? Did everyone find the budget?
I'm still looking because I dropped mine.
Yes, right after this.
Yeah, I know I dropped them.
Oh, another shuffle, right?
Right after
One
what?
if I find it.
No.
Well, I gotta pay when you don't,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I've read it anyway.
Expenses are the same.
Everything seems to be in line.
Yep.
You have a motion to approve the harbor, to recommend the harbor master schedule.
I'll make that motion.
Motion,
I'll second that.
second by Paul. Any discussion on the harbor master? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Budget's recommended. Triton. Speaking for myself, I have a real problem in recommending the Triton assessment. I've been to a lot of their meetings. The school committee, in my estimation, is not necessarily following the dictates of the town, in that both Rowley and Salisbury, the voters who voted the school committee in, and supposedly the school committee represents the town, has voted a budget that is different. That was last year. This year, Rowley sent a letter to Triton indicating what they could pay for an increase. Triton came up with a budget, and Salisbury basically said, we can't afford the budget. They have $1 million increase. Triton reviewed the budget. They took out the dentist's insurance increase because there wasn't any. They took out another line item that basically they should have taken out in the beginning, and about the only thing that they eliminated was a $990 phone booth to come up with a revised budget.
And one personnel, wasn't it?
I don't know whether they decreased any personnel or not. I didn't see any.
But I went to the meeting too, and basically the biggest thing again is, like it usually is the in the special needs area where there's, which is kind of, an uncontrolled, but yet, necessary costs that they can't do anything about that, and if that makes up,
Well,
a good portion of the, of the increase, if you take out, remember, Brian Ford, you mentioned, if you took out the special.
Yes, I
education,
realize
a couple of
that.
things,
right.
your expense, your increase would have been under 2%, he said it would have been 1.8, but it's these other costs and stuff like that that.
I realize that.
So, I mean, I think that's somewhat of a valid point,
It is a valid point. However, we face similar type of things. I am giving my opinion. Okay?
Okay, well, we did
You-
have.
This is a 7-person board that votes, has 7 votes, and can vote however they feel.
Yeah, well, I'm just stating my
Right.
opinion too.
Is everyone
I appreciate
fully
it.
conversant with this budget? I mean, if you go, I've started going through the school budget, which is pages and pages long. Personally, I'd like to table it, have more time on it.
I don't know whether
If you need another week.
do we have
you
another
have
week?
Another week.
Okay.
I have the requested amount, and that's what I kinda need to total everything up, but, you know, as long as it's done before I go to the printer.
Mhm.
There's no changes that we can make in the budget. Or even recommend.
Well, we can come up with our own figure, okay? We can say that for the Triton assessment of $10,547,556, if you go back to what Rowley had proposed, that number is $10,427,192. We can recommend that amount.
Then we come back with the other two towns voting it, and we have to go back and decrease budgets again like we did last year.
That's right. But if Salisbury is in such a bind, if we come up with a no for the Triton budget, that might make a difference in Triton. And I personally would like to see that both towns last year, it's not that they voted for or disapproved a large budget. Both towns voted for a Triton budget, okay? And they voted against, they defeated the override. So it wasn't a question of, at that point, Triton not knowing what the budget is. They had a budget. The budget was the one that both towns approved.
But that isn't the one that we had to pay for.
True, because Triton came up with a budget that was more than that,
That
but
we
less than
approved.
our original one.
So then we had to go back and cut because we hadn't voted money
Yes,
for that.
right. I agree.
So, I don't know.
But I think
I mean-
that, go ahead, John.
I don't know if we can do anything about it, because if we decide to vote against it, and Salisbury votes against it, and then it goes back to Triton, by law, they can change that budget by $1 and then come back. And of course, if it gets defeated, the state's gonna come in and dictate what the budget should be to all three towns, which will end up probably being in favor of the school. So really,
Well-
our hands are tied
We don't know.
to some degree, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
Schools
it's,
don't vote.
we're assuming that, that if we defeat the budget on a second time, that it'll be overridden. But I don't know if there's ever been a test case on it or not.
But it goes to the Department of Education.
Right. And they decide what your budget's going to be.
I mean, we can afford this number, right? I mean, it's
Yes, I
it's
mean-
more than what we
Right.
wanted, but it's far less than we probably anticipated, and it's less than it was last year. And I know every year, the different towns in the bucket, but
My
you know,
parent-
this year we're not.
My problem and the problem I had last year is you're not really, you're not asking the parents too. You're putting the vote and the mention about the money and stuff, but the people who have kids and stuff like that, they're not gonna say, yeah, go on, lay off another 10 teachers, lay off another 12 teachers. That's not a good thing for the town, That's not a good thing if you wanna attract people in for the schools, if they read in the paper, say, okay, well, town of Raleigh,
Well,
lay off another.
that argument's been
Well,
used
but
so
it's-
much,
it's- well,
and
I
that's,
mean,
that's
Madigan's
not
been used, my
necessarily-
son in the 10th grade was taking Italian, and because they made the cuts, he couldn't take Italian. And that, there was a number
That's
of
okay.
classes and things that have been, been cut. I don't think that's good for the school to have cuts like that.
But-
And the other thing is too, is that if it comes down to like, there's 40 less kids, right? So you're saying, okay, well, we can cut down by this much. You can't just going with a cleaver because those kids are spread out amongst, 12 grades. So you can't, it's not a simple
Right, but
thing
if
to
you
lay
look
off a
at
teacher,
the last
you know.
5 years, you're not talking about a total of
Well,
40 kids, the population, the enrollment
have you looked
has
at,
gone
have you looked
down.
at the graph that they put together, the Triton School? It shows that there was actually more money coming in from the state, 20 years ago than they're getting now, because the monies keep on going down. The money's going down from the state at a percentage even
As
more.
a percentage dollar
As a
value, it's a
percentage
straight
more
line.
it's going down than,
Right.
and they can't afford, because you have these other
But hold on,
costs
what do you
like
mean,
special
they can't
education.
afford it?
I'm saying
We
special.
can't afford it.
Special
It's not
education.
Triton's money.
Special education is one of.
It's the
well,
town's money.
Okay, but you're not, special, the problem with the Triton budget is you have these big budget items like special education. What are you gonna do? If it goes up a couple $100,000, you have one person that's
So if it
severely.
goes up $1 million, what do you do? Take
If you
out the
have
first
one
and
person
second
that's
grades and
severely
say,
handicapped
we're
and
not
stuff
gonna
that
have
comes into
that?
the school system, that one person costs $190,000.
I
whether you
realize
like
that.
it or not. So, I mean, it's, like I said, if you looked at his budget the way,
Yes, I looked
if
at
you
it.
took off those major items,
Right.
the increase would have been under 2%.
Yeah, if you look at the
Which,
town's
I'm
budget
just saying,
and take
you know,
out the increases in the health
Well,
insurance and
I'm not
stuff
gonna
like
get into the
that.
other things about the
But-
town, Larry, really, but I'm
No,
just
but,
saying, I can
I'm just saying
understand, I can
that,
understand some of the things that are going on with the Triton budget. It's,
Has
You know, and-
Salisbury made any effort to talk to any of the other towns about the budget?
Their feeling is that Rowley will pass the budget and then they won't have any choice but to put it in the override. And right now, the feeling is that the override will fail.
And Newbury will pass the budget, there's no
Right.
question there.
Newbury, so.
Dave, I got a question for you. Was it you that said a couple of months ago that with Triton, you folks told, the selectmen told the town, the district, that Raleigh could afford up to about a $400,000 increase, or am I imagining things?
It wasn't 400,000, I forget Larry.
Okay, I-
We sent them a letter.
Yeah, the letter said $290,000.
$290?
Around
Right.
300,000.
Because I was say if it's going up 384, and I was gonna say if that's below the 400,
The
but,
problem with,
okay.
the problem you get into with the Triton budget is we either voted up or voted down. If two towns voted down, then the school committee has, and I might have the numbers wrong, but they have like 30 days to reset a new budget. They reset the new budget. We then have around 30 or maybe 60 days to have another town meeting at our expense to vote on that budget. If we don't have the town meeting, then the new budget figure automatically goes into effect. That's what happened last year, basically, is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then, and ultimately, if by July 1st there's no budget approved, then they go on a 1/12 budget till December 31st. And January 1st, the budget issue goes to the Department of Education. And my statement has been consistently was, if you're going to the Commissioner of Education, do you think he's gonna side with the school, or do you think he's gonna side with the town trying to cut the budget? I may be wrong, but I'm assuming that he's gonna side with the school, so it's a losing proposition all around. And this year, there was a small increase for us, and I realize Salisbury's got hurt bad. We got hurt pretty good last year. Salisbury got hurt even worse last year, and Salisbury's getting really hit hard this year.
In order to make a change for Salisbury, they have to have a dramatic cut, because they're
Well, I mean, it goes by
$800,000.
student formulas, and the system is losing students. Salisbury is losing less students than Newbury and Raleigh is, so therefore their assessments are higher. And the other point I made last night at our meeting was when you get to Whittier, you think Salisbury, Triton's bad, when you see the figures for Whittier and Essex Aggie, and they're up big time because we're sending more students there. So I mean, the schools, it's sad to say, we have very little control over it. And what I was, and my beef with the school is, and I think next year going in, is we need to go before their school even looks at their budget, we need to tell them, look, the 3 towns can afford $1 million increase in your budget. That's 300,000 per town, 333,000 per town. And naturally, the formula doesn't
But
quite
it's
work
really
out
not a
evenly,
cost-
but
it's really
we
not a
tell
cost
them you have
issue.
$1 million.
It's
Well,
more of
if
a
you wanna-
revenue issue than
If
a
you want
cost
to pass
issue.
out $800,000 in pay raises, then you only have $200,000 to increase everything else. That's the way the town works.
And
We look at how
it's-
much money we got, and we were able this year, because of the increase in the meal money, to revamp the
Yes, thank you.
salary schedule for non-union employees, so we did. The school needs to look at, they don't look at their revenue. They look at
State-
what last year's budget was and how much we're gonna increase it.
The state
We have to
needs
look
pay
at the
more.
revenue side.
And the
And
state
that's,
needs to
that's
pay
the
more
problem,
money,
is
though, you know?
they just give us a bill. They're not worried about revenue, they're just giving us a bill. And obviously, the state needs to come in and make some major changes, but all the education bills that are in place right now really doesn't do anything for Triton, because it's just, we come out in the bottom end of the formula. The regional schools get hurt time after time, so. And if you look at the figures that Brian Forger, the superintendent, put out, it's obvious that the state is cutting back, paying less and less, and the towns are paying more and more, and they got us over a barrel. I mean, we can say no, but ultimately we're gonna pay anyway. And
But
it's-
who has us over the barrel? Not this, it's more the fault of the, you know, the state not paying the
Yeah, but I
share.
mean,
That's
we
what
don't
it
have any
is.
control over that.
But I mean, it
But I'm just
doesn't make any
saying,
difference
you know,
whether
well,
it's the state or
You have to
whatever.
have, you have to cut some slack there, I think, because of that, because of the fact that the state keeps on cutting by more of a larger percentage.
There's a very simple solution.
Yeah,
You
just
take
like
the
our teachers do.
you take the $1 million, okay, cap, and then if Triton needs more, they get it from the state.
Or they cut their budgets.
Yeah.
In other areas. That's the problem, is they're not cutting, they're going in and just saying, okay, we need a million in raises, we need 600,000 in special ed, and we got the increased retirement, which is the same bills we have. And they just add it on. We have to sit here, and when Debbie and you guys and the selectmen,
They don't have a
when we
choice
figure
of
the budget
special
out, we
ed,
have to say, well, how much money we got? And the only thing that saved us the last couple of years for Triton is, in the schools, is we've had some extra free cash because the economy's been pretty good. Take away the free cash and we're in trouble.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Bernie?
it's-
Right, and again, I'm not quite sure of the procedural aspects of this, but I've been at most of the Triton meetings, budget meetings as well, and I've gone through the budget very, very carefully. The drivers in the budget is the existing teachers contract and the special ed. That basically says both of those two things need to have kind of maximum attention on them from the school administration and the school board. That's A. B, the issue with the state not living up to their commitments, that's a real issue. And from my observations, I think that for the first time, the school board is taking their responsibility of pushing the issue with the state seriously. And thanks to Marissa, they're doing it effectively. They're inching the ball further in terms of building their understanding and capability of getting more money from the state. So those are all good things. We want to encourage that. I think the town needs to encourage them to keep moving in that direction. At the same time, this coming year, we're going to see, at the end of this year, we're going to see the outcome of the negotiations with the health insurance for all the employees in the school district, and they're going to start the process of negotiating the teachers' contract. Those are big things, and if they don't pay attention to them, and we don't encourage them to pay attention to them, we're going to be back here next year in worse shape because they will have potentially done to us what they did previously in the last round of contracts. And those contracts need to be much tighter and in line with what the towns can provide. And that's going to mean really difficult and hard negotiations between the school administration and the unions. And as the town, because this is negotiations, you've got to be ready for worst case scenarios, and we understand what those worst case scenarios may be. The second thing is that the special ed budget is huge. And it requires some really skillful management to manage that size of a budget. And I have no clue as to whether it's efficiently run or not efficiently run. They've worked hard to kind of figure out how to do more in-house cases, kind of bringing, rather than sending students out, they're treating them inside. And we've invested, and they've invested, the town has invested in providing those services. So now we need to see a payback from that. And we need management in the special ed area to basically be focused in on that. Because if all that investment didn't lead to a lower incident of sending students out, then we've just increased our costs with no benefits. And they've got programs now, funding programs, which have been designed to reduce those risks. And you need them to be encouraged to kind of manage those. So that says, and given that, what is it that we do? I don't know. I think the select board voted to accept the Triton budget. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we did. I mean, we don't see, in other words, you can sit here and go through the budget and say, I think they ought to hire one less math teacher. Doesn't make any difference at Triton. We either vote the budget up or we vote it down. We don't sit here and tell them where they need to make the cuts. What we need to do going ahead is, and what I'm saying is, tell them next year is, we're allowing you $1 million. Does that mean they're gonna go along with us? No. But they need to know right up front that when they start their budget process, they're only gonna be allowed $1 million increase. That's what the three towns can basically reasonably afford. If they're gonna come in with a 1.7 or a $2 million budget, then they're gonna know up front that there's gonna be a battle. And if we don't have enough free cash or whatever, then we'll have to make cuts in our budget like we did last year. We didn't hire a police sergeant until later, we didn't hire the 2 firemen until this spring, and there were a couple other cuts I believe we did. And then we added some free cash in there. So, I mean, there's a limited amount of money.
Right.
And Triton needs
so
to
the issue
understand
is-
that what those limitations are, and I think we have to make a better effort moving forward to make sure they do understand what those limitations. If they disregard them, there's not a lot of things we can do, but at least we need to be very much upfront as to what we can
Right,
afford.
so the signal that was sent by the select board is to both Triton and the taxpayers, is that we're supporting the budget as written. What happens if the finance committee doesn't support the budget? That's a signal to the taxpayers, and it's also a signal to Triton that we're serious about this. So what you can control is the signal that you're going to send. And then I don't know what happens at town meeting, and you have to game out what happens if your not recommend means that the budget gets voted down. Then where are we, and what's the next step? Because I think you have a powerful voice, and because up to this point, until last year, it's always been, the budget's basically been accepted. Last year, it was rejected, and we are benefiting this year. This year's Triton budget is a reflection of the fight that we put up last year. And it was to our benefit that there was a fight. Even though we ended up not where we wanted to be, they took a very different attitude. They started their budget process earlier. They went into kind of no additional spending at all was their going in proposition, and they've kind of held to that. So the issue is how do you kind of keep the pressure on them so that they are going to pay attention to those contract negotiations, take a harder look at the special ed management and the capturing of the benefits from all the investment we've
See, I don't really agree with the part about the $1 million, because you don't know what type of, I would agree, more agreeable to saying, okay, we want to stop at the cost of living increases, we want to cap those at 2%.
We don't have any control
But
over them.
but you do with collective bargaining, if you don't have control, but you can make that point crystal clear before you go and be proactive, before you have collective bargaining agreement, say this is what we expect. you're laughing, I know, but I mean,
No,
that's.
I'm not laughing.
But I
But
mean,
I'm
we
just
we
saying
have even
that's-
less control
But-
over
but I'm
collective.
I know we don't have say, but at least
bargaining.
you're talking about a point that there is control by Triton.
By
Triton
Tri-
doesn't have control over a lot of these other costs.
But they do on that.
But they certainly do on the schools, which is the lion's share of their budget. So if you just make it clear, I mean, I don't know if you can even set like indexes, because I know I work for the state, the executive department, and they set like cost of living as a 2, unless they get revenues at a certain level, then they can get 2.5%. I don't know if you can do something creative like that, because I'd mentioned that with the school, the committee, but that's something that there is some control over.
The
You
thing
know,
is,
from,
Peter, and you gotta understand that as we move forward, we know that each year we can increase the taxes by 2.5% under the state law. We also are able to increase the new growth. Last couple of years, we've had, drive around town, there's all kinds of new growth. And that's, and what the selectmen have done and what we voted in the past was, we give Triton 50% of those two numbers. Because keep in mind, when you look at the next two schools, that's
Yeah.
gonna add us, so we're almost doing 60% of our money into the schools because of Whittier and the other one. So, we start off with, we can tell you right now, next year, that, we're gonna have another $350,000 in new revenue that we know we're gonna get, so the school gets $250. Maybe a little bit more depending on how things go, but that's the number that's why I'm saying we need to tell the schools we can afford $1 million next year. So they're bargaining right now for teachers' contracts. If they want to bargain the teachers an $800,000 raise in total, then they got $200,000 of that million that left for other things. If they can keep the teachers down to $300,000 or $400,000 raise, and they've gotten good raises in the last few years, believe me. Then they got more money to spend on whether it's special ed or, want to do something else, that's fine.
But see, that's.
They need to understand that our ability to pay is finite. We can't just go out and get
But
more
that's
money.
what we say every year.
We don't have that ability.
But we say that every year too, and what does it get us? I mean, but that's why.
That's all we can do is fight it.
I think the tack is to go after certain things that they do and make it known that, so they're not hiding behind another category or saying this is because of this. If you do make a statement and say something, well, we would like an effort to say that when you go up for your contract negotiation, if you keep in mind that we really can't afford much more than 2%, because the teachers on the lower end get those step increases, and it probably comes out to like 3.5% or 4% when everything is said and done. There's something that can be controlled.
Well, I mean, they have
Instead
to
of
make
hiding
that,
behind,
but that's their decision to make, and we have no ability to force them
Well,
to do
not
anything.
force it, but suggest.
That's what I'm saying, and right away, as soon as this budget's, whenever we get done with the sum of this budget, we need to go to Triton, all three towns, and say, look,
Yeah, I mean,
Have to sit down with them
we've
and say,
given
this
them
is-
suggestions. We've sent them a letter saying, here's what we can afford.
well, I think we need to do more than send them a
Salisbury
letter.
has come back and said, we can't afford $1 million, okay? And that's been it.
But I think they were locked in this is the third year of their teachers' contract, so they were
Right,
locked in.
but-
The key now is they were negotiating a new contract for the next 3 years.
Hopefully they'll
And
pay attention.
what we need to do is emphasize the fact that they get to keep the contract within a certain limit. Otherwise, the towns can't afford it.
You spell it out to them. I mean, that's.
Right, but even if so I don't have any problem spelling it out, and the 2% or less than 2% sounds fine. The issue is, how do you make them really pay attention to that?
Yeah, how do you make them follow
So
through with it?
The one mechanism that you've got is not to support this budget, not to recommend this budget.
But then.
That's all that you've got.
That's what happened last time, the time before it happens, and it's always, when you make a number, then they can hide behind other numbers and say, well, this happened here, but if they don't have any,
But Peter, I've just agreed that we can communicate the 2% in terms of the strategy on the contract negotiation. The issue is, that you guys have got, is you've got to make got to support or not support, recommend or not recommend this budget. And the issue is what are the consequences and what are the benefits of those two, of the two options?
The consequences are that we'll have to deduct from other budgets.
Right.
If we,
Yeah, but I mean, if
Right.
the Department of Education says, here's your new budget, so what? We're already down that road, you know,
yeah, you're also adding on costs of town meetings
$5,000.
every time you do it,
I realize that,
yeah.
But the other thing
It doesn't
too is
put
when
the-
the,
but
It doesn't put the town in a good position if that ever happens, because then it makes the paper, Triton, and then they have the Department of Education intervenes and it's like that. Now you're putting a lot of bad press for this town or for,
Well,
for the
maybe
Triton
Triton
region and
doesn't
stuff
want
like
to
that.
have-
Is that what
wants
you
to
want? You
avoid the
want the
bad press.
schools, you want the parents that have kids, to, you
you
want
want
that
the
kind of
elderly that don't
reputation.
have kids that are on a
Well,
fixed
I'm just saying
income,
you have to
know,
look
it's-
at both, but, I mean, that's,
well,
but the thing that drives it too is that the bottom line is, the state says we have $1 million in free cash or whatever, and they're gonna, how are we gonna try to convince somebody that we can't afford it when,
right.
like last year, we had all that money, and
Triton-
Triton do that too.
And that's a good point you raised, because now this year Triton is saying that they're projecting out, they're only gonna have less than $200,000 in their excess deficiency budget for a $40 million budget. That kind of tells the story that, they don't have a lot of excess funds and money kicking around. So, that doesn't make us look good either. I mean, it doesn't make the state look good either. I think I made a suggestion too that we should go out there, make it known, for the Governor Baker, because Governor Baker prides himself for being a fiduciary person. Let's say that you got all these schools that are running at minimum, reserves and excess deficiency. That looks bad. That you have school systems. What?
Who is we?
I'm talking
Finance
about the
committee,
no.
school
I'm
committee?
talking about I'm talking about. Well, it makes I think the state look bad for one thing, if they're allowing these schools to run at minimum, reserves and I'm sure that Charlie Baker doesn't want that kind of press. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I mean, I just think it's a mess.
Charlie doesn't care about the Triton budget.
Well, I think he might not, well, we say that, but if it's, I'm not just saying the Triton budget, I'm saying all schools across
Yeah,
the
they-
board that have issues like
And
the
they're
Triton
increasing the
school
school
has.
funding, but it's not coming to Triton, it's going to Lawrence and Lowell
Yeah.
and Boston.
Yeah.
I know, that's a problem too.
Medford and Malden, so, we're in the same hole, we either approve the budget or we don't, and then if you vote not to recommend it, then we move forward on that basis. I think it's, what Bernie says is you either vote it up, or either recommend it or don't recommend it at this point.
I'll make a motion that we recommend the Triton budget.
okay, have a motion to recommend the Triton budget. Do I have a second?
I,
I'm not gonna ask for any other discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I,
All those opposed? No?
No.
Okay, 4-3, the Triton budget is recommended.
Could we trade water for school system with Georgetown? Maybe it's time to get out of this place.
no.
They have a $47 million budget. Don't go by what they say there. You've got to add up all the things at the back in their budget and go to the state database to look at exactly how much money is spent. It's a big job.
Let's move on. Next item is the Essex agricultural budget. Going from 68,000 to 120,000.
I found you very lucky to be,
It's really not going, if you see the note,
number of students.
I have an article on the special town meeting.
Oh.
For 52,000 for this year. But that was the original request.
There was a big article in the Newburyport News the other night that they had 1,400 applicants for 400 spots
Positions.
this past year, and we got several of them.
Yes, as you can see, we started out thinking that maybe, there were gonna be four, because there's waiting lists. And that process evolves right up until they start school, but, it wasn't until I got the bill and I said, oh geez, they didn't tell me. And they said, oh no, we have 7, and 1's graduating, 2 are applying, so at this point, we're planning for potentially 8.
Now, it says that per pupil transportation cost is about $2,100 per pupil. Is there like one bus that leaves for those 7 or so or 8 from Raleigh to the school?
Yes.
And then it leaves, like, so they can't do extracurricular activities or anything, right? Because there's only probably one bus that goes and one that comes back?
Well, and there may even be late busing factored in. I really don't know the details of this. Everything, this is a very unique school because
Yeah, I
the
mean, it's in
state-
Danvers.
Yeah, the state sets their, per pupil cost. It's actually not even set by their school committee, and we're only allowed to send, students for agriculture because we're in the Whittier Voc Tech. And years ago, this was just part of, it was just an agricultural
Sure,
school.
school, yeah.
And once they added that vocational school, it just changes, so we have a very narrow agricultural program, like veterinary services and things like that, and,
Okay.
Farming. But, so the busing is still an estimate, and the per pupil cost is an estimate, so I'm going by what the school administration office recommended, and that's where we are, and I hope we're not back next year looking for an adjustment, but maybe there's a huge waiting list, so maybe the
Yeah.
2 students don't get in, I don't know, we don't know.
Yeah, okay.
The busing, they pick up Raleigh, Georgetown,
Yeah,
Ipswich, one
Ipswich.
bus will pick up 4 or 5 towns depending on
Okay.
how many students.
They haven't-
It's
they
not
don't-
just one town, one bus for one.
Yeah, they don't even know what the bus routes are gonna
Whittier does the
be
same
until
thing, they pick up a certain
even
number
late
of students.
August, so all that is still in flux, for us in March.
I heard they don't
Child
drop
on
them
my
off
street
at the
gets
house.
dropped
They
off
drop them
about
off at
4
certain,
o'clock, I guess, from Essex.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the Essex agricultural budget,
I'll make a motion.
to recommend rather?
Recommend that.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Budget is recommended. Whittier Vocational is next.
Make a motion to recommend Whittier Vocational.
You have a motion to recommend Whittier.
And that's basically going up about 10%, a little over, because you're going from 21 to 23 students, which is about roughly 10%.
Right.
So it's pretty stable for the last 2 years. I'll make a motion. that-
You know, you'll second.
Recommend.
Motion made.
Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Highway and Tree Department revise.
Good luck, guys.
Yes.
I'd like to,
Bar is closing, so
I just wanted just to advocate for the highway department. I ask that we do not reduce the highway department at this time by the 64,000. We all know when Patrick was here, that the highway department is understaffed for many years. And the surrounding town personnel survey that he did backed up that information, that we need 2 people. People forget that the highway department is one of our most important departments, as they keep our road system safe and our drainage systems working. The fire and police have increased their staff because they needed it. I mean, they're important departments, but highway departments always seem to be left on the back burner. And for many years, Patrick's not strong enough to advocate, but this year he decided that he wanted to go for the 2 people, and I really think the department needs it. You know, he's short one foreman right now until he fills that position. But unless we, you know, leave this as it is, I just don't wanna wait for, if we have money later, to try to figure out whether it's one or two people. I'm just advocating for the two. If we have to take money from other departments that are, you know, looking for additional staff, you know, I would hope that we look at that. Because the highway department is, you know, it's the roads, it's the roads we drive on. We have hurricanes, we have snowstorms. If somebody isn't there to take that on and make those roads safe, people don't go to work, kids don't go to school. I mean, you can see around town, there's potholes, and they haven't really been filled, I don't think, as fast as they should, because I travel Georgetown, Haverhill when I'm driving with my students, and it's because he just doesn't have enough people to keep up with everything. So, I mean, I think since the town has made a commitment to the department heads and things of that nature in upgrading their salaries and things, I think now's the time that we keep the highway department or address the highway department need. When staff's on vacation, you know, he's limited to what he can do. Now, as everyone knows, this is the third year that Patrick's going ahead with the Chapter 90 funding and doing a lot of roads. We haven't done them for a long time, and then finally he took the $1 million that he had and he starts to repair the roads and redo the roads and things of that nature. But that takes staffing to do that. So when he's committed to that, you know, something else isn't getting done. So
They
and
were
then
funding
usually-
6 and 2 seasonals, right?
Yeah, he's looking
Yeah.
for 2 additional full-time staff, which is the 64,790. But in a small department like that, a lot of people go on vacation. So when people go on vacation, that's during the construction season. I know that some of the roads, the loaming and seeding, didn't get done till the following year. You know, because it takes staffing to make things happen. So I mean, I'm just advocating for that position. 64 grand. But
Route 1 and 133,
that's state highway.
That's
State.
highway.
Well,
So
133
far.
the town maintains, but Route 1 is, in 1A is state highway.
But 133 the town takes
Yeah.
care of.
So, I mean, you know, can we afford it? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know everybody wants to, you know, put these things off to the end, but I want to make sure that this goes as a number one add-in or whatever, because I think it always ends up, you know, being dropped, or it'll be cut to one person, and then we go back, and one person will only bring it back to where he was many years ago, because one person did
Right.
leave and they never replaced it. So, I mean, last year or the year before, we put a half a person in the cemetery department and half in the highway, which was a big improvement. And they now interact with each other, which is great. So even though we don't have a public works department, we still have interaction between 2 different departments, and I think that's a good sign. So I think this would help the cemetery in addition, because there'd be more people available. So that's, I would hope that we could maybe leave it the way it was, as opposed to reducing it at this time.
You know, the biggest thing is, you know, it's the roads and road safety, clearing the roads, keeping the roads up.
People don't realize that, you know, the fire department or the police department can't get to an emergency until the roads are open. I
Yeah.
mean, when we had all those trees come down, I mean, you know, I don't know how he did it. I know he has contracted money to do, he did $50,000 worth of tree removal, but still, you know, on an average storms, and we have storms, hurricanes, it's not just winter stuff, you know, the public, not public works, but the highway department is an important department, you know, to make sure you have staffing. He has the vehicles, he just doesn't have the personnel that he needs.
And another thing I'd like to add on, that a few years back, we used to hire a contractor to come in to do all the town commons. And now the highway department does that,
Right.
included into their work, and they need manpower.
Just based on.
This budget that we have here is minus the 64,000, right?
Yeah, because
Minus the 2
when
people.
he submitted in issues and options, the guideline was,
Right.
you know, if you wanted something extra, submit it under issues and options. But then I looked at it, and I said, oh, wait a minute, you put this in already when we haven't decided yet what we can afford under issues and options yet. So that's why he revised it.
Right.
But, so we've already approved it.
You recommended
Yeah,
something, but then
recommended, yeah.
he realized that, the process was to submit, just to have the cost of what it's gonna be, and then when we would look at it and see what, in the end, what could we afford and not afford. And certainly the selectmen support this. It was just, we don't know yet until we tally everything. I have, other costs increase. That was the whole point. When he initially submitted it and went to the FinCom, it was the next night, and when the selectmen realized, they were already factoring in things that were outside the guidelines and the issues and options.
We recommended the higher budget, in other words.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
am returning
Right.
it back because he did revise it and pending, under that process of the issues and options that we adopted.
And
Yeah,
he's
we have to
lowering
wait and see.
it below what he had last year.
Well, we have an employee that left, so the new hire rate would be lower in the new budget. That adjusted for that, a vacancy that we currently have.
I know the selectmen recommended as a high priority, what was it, the 5,000 for the Council on Aging?
In the expense budget.
Right.
I mean, maybe you could hold this for a week till we can work on this a little bit more. Because there may be a result in cutting some other line that you've already approved.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I work with Larry over the next week on
Yeah.
this.
we gave out a lot of raises this year, significant raises, and I'm not privy to what the total number is in the budget that we need to meet, but to me, I'm thinking adding people in a department that's underfunded is
Right.
probably a higher priority than maybe some of the increases that we got. And I'm not advocating that we go back and look at those, but I think we need to include this as a priority, you know what I mean?
Right.
We don't have many opportunities, or he hasn't had many opportunities to get this staffing increased. The fire and police always come first. Those are public safety people, we all know that. And that's important that we're doing that, and we know that maybe next year or the year after, the fire department's gonna need additional staffing. But then, then it's always who gets cut or who doesn't, get up to that where they need. And I really think the highway department is understaffed, and we should just address it. And if it absolutely becomes an issue, then we look at it at some point later down the road. But I think I'd like to send a signal to, to the selectmen that just in my point of view is that we should really put this as one of the top priorities.
Right.
That's only my opinion.
Why don't we put this off till next week?
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you wanna table this until next week where we get a better handle on
What
where
better
everything-
handle will we have by next week?
Well, I have to look at all what we have in the budget and look at all the issues and options that are out there that are pending. The library had one, the COA tentatively has the $5,000 that's in there. This one, so that's what we kind of have to look at.
I have no
We've
problem if you want
already
to table it
approved-
for a week, but
we've already
my
approved it.
opinion's not
You
gonna
approved
change.
the budget he originally
No,
said.
We can
I
table
don't
it.
want it to.
Okay,
but,
so we can-
Only weighting based on other factual numbers, right?
Right.
Not on whether or not to do it, only on the availability of monies to do it.
Right, whether we can include it now or whether it goes as a high
I thought part of
priority.
the argument was with the increases in the Triton, not the Triton, but in our budgets here was because we were expecting money from, from other sources like the,
Yeah, the meals
meal
tax.
tax and stuff like that. So, to me, I think it's more or less a no-brainer that we should at least put the highway stuff up to a level where, that, they can better handle things. If there's money there and if there's money that can be tapped into the meals tax, why can't we just, include it now? instead of, that would be my question.
We don't know.
Well, hopefully in a
Well-
week, we'd have a better handle on what can,
Yeah,
where the rest of the
We
budgets.
have already approved a higher amount.
But
So
we,
if
we
we
don't
wait-
know, we don't know what that ceiling is, so
Yeah,
we
but
don't
we already
know.
approved the higher amount, so if we
Right.
table this for a week,
Okay,
then we'll have a better figure to
All right.
work with. So I'll make a
Okay.
motion that we table this one till next week.
Okay, I have a motion to table.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any
No.
opposed? You say no?
No, yeah.
Okay. The ayes have it. It's tabled till next week. Next is blanket insurance.
Make a motion that we approve system insurance,
Yeah.
if you don't have anything to say about it.
Blanket insurance is what you're calling insurance as opposed to group insurance?
That's blanket insurance,
Okay. You just want to make sure.
property casualty, workers' comp, police and fire accident.
Okay. I
I'll
have a
second the motion.
motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Blanket insurance is recommended. Health insurance, Medicare, and FICA.
Make a motion that we approve.
Have a motion to
second.
approve and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Ayes have it, the recommendation is approved. Okay. Now let's go to the reserve fund transfers. First one is the 6,300. Let's look at that first. For maintaining the annex.
Make a motion that we approve the request for transfer of 6,300.
I'll second
I
it.
have a motion and a second. Any discussion on it? All those in favor signify.
Is
Yes.
that the air conditioners?
No, this, we
This is
had to
water lines.
replace where the water main is
okay,
on
yeah.
School Street
Yeah.
into the building.
Mhm.
That had to be replaced, and we also have, unrelated to that pipe, condensate heating pipes that are constantly leaking, that have been patched. But we do have an article, we're trying to get funding to replace that.
The air conditioning went into the capital budget.
The air conditioning?
Yeah, air conditioners for the annex.
I don't know anything about an air
No.
conditioner on the annex.
No, I don't either.
I think we have
Was-
wall unit air conditioners in there, and I have not heard that they.
I'll double check with Brianne. I was talking to her the other day and she said she put it,
I'd have to,
air conditioners which had failed into the capital budget.
I would have to check that.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't remember
yeah,
seeing
but
that,
that
but I'll
might
check
not
it.
be a reserve fund transfer. It could be in her own capital budget.
Yeah, I'll check that. I can't remember off the top of my head.
I'll look into it.
Okay, any other comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The transfer is approved. And we have to everybody sign. In the meantime, there will be no minutes So we'll just go to the next
3 or 4, whatever you want.
meeting date.
We have the other transfer.
Yes, I know, but I was just saying in the meantime.
Why don't we just take that this way?
I'll take it through. Okay, second transfer is $4,800. Town Hall building.
Make a motion that we accept.
I'll second that.
Okay.
It's similar in nature.
It's a couple of things, so it was also the water main
Yeah.
connection, the air conditioning unit that houses the server room in the basement had to be repaired, but part of that water main connection too was the grounding outside of the building, we had to be done by an electrician.
It's odd that both buildings had to have
Yes.
water.
But you know what, they're both about 1904 or something, before plumbing, I guess, or when plumbing came in,
Well,
but
I-
it was
yeah.
corroded.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, I don't know if you realize this, but
That
I
happened
had,
to you.
I happened to me
Yet last year,
last summer. I had,
yes, I remember.
my water
And I-
connection.
'cause I,
You had a hole in it?
Yeah, I had a hole in it, I had to replace it from my house to the street.
yeah, that's exactly what happened in both buildings.
It's because the water was corroded. It's very corrosive water, so it
Because
does
my house was one of the first
wonder what that.
original,
Mm.
you know.
It was the original piping here and at the ends. But the plumber and the water department said, we can't touch this thing is gonna, you know.
Doesn't help because we have such high water around here.
They're very close.
Let's see, do.
A motion?
Is that Pat?
Yeah, we have a
Vote on the
motion and a
second.
second. Any other discussion?
No.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion is carries. 800,
It's almost my bedtime.
past my bedtime.
I got 15 minutes.
Yeah. My bedtime.
I may fall asleep on the way home.
I have to be at work at 8 o'clock, so.
Well, next week shouldn't be as bad,
I'll be at the dentist at 8 o'clock.
Oh,
Yeah, been seeing a lot of him lately. He has a new Ferrari. What happens when you get old?
the dental care is
The
very
pipes go.
expensive,
Yeah, it's on an individual basis, it's not even worth it.
Make a motion that we meet next week.
Sounds good.
I'm sorry. Yeah, we have the highway budget anyways to